The day had started like any other, quiet, uneventful, and filled with the kind of small hopes only a father carries. My daughter's engagement was supposed to be the light at the end of a tunnel for me, a moment of pride that would heal the distance years of divorce and misunderstandings had created. I remember sitting in my living room that morning, rehearsing the little speech I'd prepared for her fiancé. Something simple but heartfelt, just a father's words to the man who would be taking his daughter's hand. I'd been saving a bottle of old wine, dusty from years in the cupboard, thinking I'd bring it to the dinner as a symbolic gesture. So when I casually called her and asked, "Sweetheart, what time is the engagement dinner?" I expected her to laugh at my eagerness or gently remind me not to make a scene. But instead there was a pause. A pause so heavy it settled in my chest like a stone. "Oh, we had it yesterday," she said. Just like that. No build-up, no explanation. Just words that shattered me in a single blow. My heart stuttered. My throat went dry. "What do you mean, yesterday?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Her tone was flat, rehearsed almost. It was small. Nothing formal. Just a dinner with a few people. "I didn't think you'd want to come. Didn't think I'd want to come." My daughter. My only daughter. The girl whose scraped knees I'd kissed, whose nightmares I'd chased away, whose tiny hand had once clutched mine at every school play. And now, she thought I wouldn't want to be there. I couldn't even respond. My mind was racing, images of her in a dress, laughing, holding her fiancé's hand, while I sat at home like a fool, believing I still had a place in her life. I hung up quickly before my voice betrayed me. The silence in the room was suffocating. The bottle of wine I'd planned to bring sat on the table, mocking me with its dusty grin. 1,000 thoughts ran through my head. Did she forget me? Was this just poor communication? Or was this deliberate? And if it was deliberate, why? My ex-wife's face flashed in my mind. She'd always been critical of me, always painting me as irresponsible, unreliable, unworthy. During the divorce, she had poisoned every conversation, every visit, until my daughter began to drift further and further. Could this have been her doing? Did she finally convince my daughter that I didn't deserve to stand beside her on her happiest days? But something inside me whispered this wasn't just about old grudges. There was a reason, a deeper, darker reason I wasn't told. Because no daughter forgets her father so easily. I picked up my phone again, scrolling through her social media. And there it was, a smiling picture of her and her fiancé, surrounded by people I barely recognized. My sister was there. My cousins were there. Even old family friends. The caption read, "The beginning of Forever Ring Sparkles #engaged #new chapter." And I wasn't even in the background. Not a trace. Then I saw it, the comment. Buried between the congratulations, one line stood out. "Glad you finally kept him out of it." My blood ran cold. My fingers trembled as I read it again and again. Me. They were glad she had kept me out. I closed my phone, but the words were already carved into me. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't miscommunication. This was betrayal. Planned, deliberate, and cruel. As the evening shadows grew long, I stared at that untouched bottle of wine. Something inside me shifted. I had a choice. Accept their decision and let myself fade quietly from her life. Or dig deeper, find out why they wanted me gone, and uncover the truth they thought I couldn't handle. And I knew in that moment silence was not an option. What secret could be so dangerous, so humiliating, that my own daughter would rather erase me from her engagement dinner than let me see it with my own eyes? Sleep was a stranger that night. I lay awake in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, replaying my daughter's words in an endless loop. "Oh, we had it yesterday." For words that twisted inside me like knives. I thought about the years I had spent carving out time for her, even when life was tearing me apart. After the divorce, I fought to keep weekends, birthdays, every scrap of time I could steal. I taught her how to ride a bike, sat through endless piano recitals, and even learned how to braid her hair when she was little because she once told me she wanted princess braids, and her mother couldn't be bothered. I wasn't perfect, no father is, but I was there. Always. And yet, when it came to her engagement, the single event I had dreamed of witnessing, she decided the world could watch, but not me. The betrayal burned deeper than I wanted to admit. My sister had been there. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years had been there. Even family friends who barely remembered her birthday. So why not me? Every rational thought I tried to hold on to crumbled under the weight of one cruel possibility. She didn't want me there. Not because she forgot. Not because of some small mistake. But because she believed I shouldn't be there. By morning I couldn't take it anymore. Called my sister. At first she was cheerful, her voice bubbling with excitement. But when I asked about the dinner, her tone shifted. Hesitation. Was. Clumsy attempt to change the subject. You know how it is, she finally muttered. It was all very last minute. I thought you knew. Knew what? Pressed. My voice was calm, but my pulse thundered. That, maybe it wasn't the right time for you to be there. There were tensions. Tensions. The word stung. What tensions? I demanded. Silence. Then she said something that nearly knocked the breath out of me. They didn't want you there because, well, they thought you'd ruin it. Ruin it. Me. The father who raised her, who would have done anything to see her smile that night. I was seen as the danger, the disruption. My chest tightened. Why would I ruin my own daughter's engagement? Her sigh was heavy. You know how your ex feels about you. She doesn't think you're stable. She's been saying things. And your daughter. She just wanted it to be perfect. The words hit harder than I could admit. My ex-wife, course. She'd been poisoning my daughter against me for years. Painting me as the unreliable father, the bitter ex, the man who never quite measured up. I thought my daughter saw through it. I thought our bond was stronger than her lies. But maybe I was wrong. After the call ended, I sat there in the stillness, my hands shaking. Was this really my daughter's choice? Or had she been manipulated, twisted into believing that the man who tucked her in at night, who cheered the loudest at her graduations, was suddenly unworthy of celebrating her engagement? I opened my phone again, scrolling back to the photos of the dinner. This time I studied every face, every detail. My daughter looked radiant, yes, but her smile, it wasn't the carefree, innocent grin I remembered. It was stiff, almost strained. Her fiancé's arm was around her, his eyes glittering with charm, but something in his expression gnawed at me. A smirk too polished, too practiced. Then I saw it again, the comment under the photo. Glad you finally kept him out of it. This wasn't just my ex-wife's doing. There was more. Something beneath the surface they didn't want me to see. I leaned back, my mind spiraling. Why would my presence ruin anything? Unless there was something I could expose. Something they were desperate to keep hidden. That night I made myself a promise. I would find out the truth. I wouldn't let whispers, lies, or carefully staged photos erase me from my daughter's life. If they thought they could bury me under secrets, they were wrong. And as I stared at that untouched bottle of wine, the gift meant for her fiancé, I realized I might still have a role to play. But it wouldn't be as a silent guest at a table. Well, it would be as the man who uncovered everything they didn't want me to know. If they thought I'd stay away quietly, they were mistaken. The first clue about my daughter's fiancé would make me question everything I thought I knew about him. And about her. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook open in front of me. It felt absurd at first, like I was investigating a crime instead of trying to understand why I had been left out of my own daughter's engagement dinner. But the weight of that single comment online, "Glad you finally kept him out of it," gnawed at me. Whoever wrote it knew more than they were saying. So, I began listing the names of everyone I recognized in the photographs from that night. My sister, my cousins, old family friends. Even a neighbor I barely remembered. And there, at the center of every picture, was my daughter's fiancé. Perfectly polished, handsome. His smile wide and confident. Too confident. Something about him unsettled me, though I couldn't yet place it. I decided to reach out to someone who had been at the dinner. An old friend of the family, Lena. She'd always been kind to me, even during the divorce, when so many others had quietly taken sides. When she picked up my call, her voice was hesitant, as if she already knew why I was calling. "I just wanted to ask," I began cautiously, "about the engagement dinner. I didn't even know it happened until the next day. Was it really so, last minute?" There was a pause. Too long. Then finally she sighed. "It wasn't last minute, no. Invitations went out weeks ago." My chest tightened. Weeks. And I hadn't even been told. Why wasn't I invited, Lena? My voice cracked despite my effort to hold steady. Silence again, and then softly. "It wasn't my place to say, but they thought it would be better this way." "Better how?" I demanded. Her next words chilled me. "They said you'd ask questions. That you'd make things difficult. That you'd ruin everything." There it was again. That same phrase. Ruin everything. I pressed further, my patience fraying. Ruin what exactly? My daughter's happiness. Her future. Or was it her fiancé's secrets they didn't want me to see? Her breath caught audibly on the line, and for a moment I thought she might hang up. But then she whispered almost fearfully, "You didn't hear this from me, but there are things about him you don't know. Things they didn't want brought up in front of everyone." My hand tightened around the phone. "What things?" "I can't," she said quickly. "Please don't ask me. Just be careful. If you push too hard, you might lose her completely." And with that she ended the call. I sat in silence, staring at the wall, my heart hammering. What could she have meant? What was so dangerous about my daughter's fiancé that my presence, my questions, would threaten to ruin everything? I turned back to the photos. I scrutinized his smile, his posture, his eyes. Something about him felt staged, like he was playing a role. The perfect fiancé, the charming gentleman. But beneath that polished surface, I sensed cracks. Driven by a gnawing suspicion, I decided to do what any protective father would. I started digging. A quick search online revealed his professional profile. A respectable job, impressive credentials, glowing reviews. But when I dug deeper, inconsistencies emerged. Jobs that seemed too short-lived. Companies that no longer existed. References that led nowhere. And then I found it. A vague forum post, buried in the depths of the internet, mentioning his name. The words were brief but devastating. "Watch out for him. Smooth talker. Left a trail of debt and broken promises." My blood ran cold. I sat back in my chair, the notebook still open. His name now underlined with shaking hands. Debt. Lies. My daughter had no idea who she was marrying. Or worse, maybe she did, and she was too blinded by love to see it. But one thing was clear. My absence from that dinner wasn't about avoiding tension. It was about silencing me. Because they knew I'd ask the questions no one else dared to ask. They knew I'd see through him. And now I had a new mission. I wasn't just going to find out why I had been excluded. I was going to uncover exactly who this man really was, before it was too late. But before I could expose him, someone else gave me a warning that made my blood run cold. Stay out of this, or you'll regret it. The more I uncovered, the less I slept. I spent hours at night with my laptop open, searching every corner of the internet, piecing together scraps about my daughter's fiancé. Each click of the mouse added fuel to the fire burning inside me. Failed ventures. Broken relationships. He was a man built on charm and quick escapes, not integrity. But if I could find this much in a matter of days, why hadn't anyone else? Why hadn't my daughter? Or had she, and chosen to ignore it? I decided I needed answers from someone who had been closer to the engagement dinner than Lena. I remembered an old family acquaintance, Mark, who had posted several smiling pictures from that night. He wasn't someone I was particularly close to, but desperation makes you bold. When I called, he answered with cautious politeness. After a few moments of small talk, I finally asked, "Mark, why wasn't I invited to my daughter's dinner?" There was a pause and then a laugh, awkward, forced. "Oh, you know how these things go. Small gatherings. They probably didn't want too much drama." Drama. The word made my skin crawl. Drama. I'm her father, not some outsider. Why would my presence be drama? Mark's tone shifted. Softer. Almost pitying. "Look, I shouldn't be saying this. But people talk. Your ex-wife's been painting a picture. That you're unpredictable. That you hold grudges. They thought it was safer if you stayed out of it." My jaw clenched. Lies. Yet believable enough to people who only saw me from the outside. But before I could respond, his voice dropped even lower, almost a whisper. "And listen, if you know what's good for you, you'll let this go." Chill ran through me. What's that supposed to mean? He sighed. Just don't dig too deep. Not about him. Not about the dinner. Some things are better left alone. People can get hurt. Froze. This wasn't just gossip. This was a warning. "Are you saying he's dangerous?" Asked carefully. But Mark immediately backtracked. "I didn't say that. I'm just saying. Sometimes the past is messy, and sometimes poking at it makes things worse. For everyone." Then, without another word, he ended the call. I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of his warning pressing down on me. Stay out of it. Let it go. How could I, when my daughter's future was on the line? If this man had a past worth hiding, it was my duty as her father to uncover it. Later that evening, I tried to reach out to my daughter again. She didn't answer. My messages went unread. The silence between us grew louder, more suffocating. It felt deliberate, as if she'd been told to shut me out completely. And that's when paranoia began to creep in. Was it just my ex-wife influencing her? Or was her fiancé already tightening his grip, isolating her, making sure no dissenting voices could reach her ears? I couldn't shake the image of her strained smile in those engagement photos. A smile that looked more like a mask than genuine joy. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became. She wasn't shutting me out because she wanted to. She was shutting me out because someone wanted her to. That night, as I stared at the bottle of wine I still hadn't opened, I realized something. This wasn't just about a forgotten dinner. It was about control, manipulation, and secrets. And the more they told me to stay away, the more determined I became to find out the truth. Because if there was one thing I knew, it was this. Silence protects liars. And I was done being silent. The next clue I uncovered about my daughter's fiancé didn't just confirm my suspicions. It revealed a dangerous double life that could destroy her completely. The warning from Lena haunted me. They said you'd ruin everything. Her words echoed in my mind like a riddle I couldn't solve. What exactly was I supposed to ruin? If my daughter was happy, if her fiancé was truly the man he presented himself to be, then my presence should have added to the celebration, not threatened it. The only explanation was that there was something about him they didn't want me to see. Something that couldn't withstand a father's scrutiny. So I dug deeper. At first, everything about him gleamed with perfection. His social media painted the portrait of a successful, stable man. Pictures of business trips, luxury dinners, and charity events. His resume was equally impressive, boasting positions in reputable companies, each title sounding grander than the last. But the more I looked, the more cracks began to show. Several of the companies he claimed to have worked for had either gone bankrupt or no longer existed. Others had no record of him at all. His LinkedIn profile was full of vague descriptions like consultant or strategist, words that meant everything and nothing at the same time. And then I stumbled across something that stopped me cold. Buried in a public records search was his name, tied to a small claims court case from years ago. The details were sparse, but the gist was clear. Unpaid debts. Thousands of dollars he had borrowed from a former colleague, never returned. The case had been quietly settled, but the stain remained for anyone who cared enough to look. My stomach churned. Was this the man my daughter was about to build a life with? A man who borrowed and ran, leaving others to pick up the pieces. I couldn't let it go. Kept searching. One lead led to another, and soon I found whispers. Anonymous posts on forums, fragments of conversations in old comment sections. Each carried the same warning. Charming but dangerous. He'll take what he wants and vanish. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. His mask of perfection was just that, a mask. Beneath it was a man with a trail of broken trust. But what terrified me most wasn't his past. It was how carefully it had been hidden. My daughter, blinded by love, would never think to look this deep. She'd see only the polished surface he wanted her to see. And that made her vulnerable. I sat at the kitchen table that night, staring at the evidence I had gathered. Printouts, screenshots, scribbled notes on scraps of paper. My daughter's smiling face looked back at me from my phone screen. Her hand entwined with his, her eyes shining with joy. How could I take that joy from her? How could I tell her that the man she believed was her future was nothing more than a con? But the alternative, saying nothing, letting her walk blindfolded into disaster, was unthinkable. I thought about calling her, telling her everything, but I knew what would happen. She'd accuse me of trying to ruin her happiness, of letting old grudges cloud my judgment. My ex-wife would fan the flames, painting me as bitter and jealous. No, I needed more. Concrete proof that even she couldn't ignore. The decision was clear. I had to keep digging. I had to find the one undeniable piece of evidence that would tear his mask away and force the truth into the light. But just as I resolved to go further, I noticed something strange. A new post appeared on my daughter's social media. A photo of her and her fiancé captioned, "Surrounded by love, protected from the rest." The word sent a chill through me. Protected. From the rest. It wasn't just chance that I had been left out. It wasn't even just my ex-wife's influence. This was deliberate. Coordinated. My daughter's fiancé wanted me gone because he knew I was the only one who could see through him. And now I was certain. The engagement dinner wasn't about celebration. It was about silencing me. But the truth they buried couldn't stay hidden forever. And what I was about to learn about my daughter's fiancé would confirm my worst fears, and reveal just how dangerous he really was. After discovering the cracks in my daughter's fiancé's story, I knew I was treading into dangerous territory. His past wasn't just messy. It was carefully hidden, like a graveyard buried under manicured grass. And every time I peeled back another layer, the rot underneath grew worse. But I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when my daughter's future was at stake. That night, I spread everything across my living room table. Screenshots of suspicious posts, copies of public records, and a timeline I had pieced together from scraps of information. It was like staring at a puzzle with half the pieces missing. But the outline was already clear enough. This man wasn't who he claimed to be. The question was, who was he? I needed answers from someone who knew him personally, someone who had seen behind the mask. After a few discreet messages through contacts I hadn't spoken to in years, I finally got a lead. A man named Victor, who had worked with him in a so-called consulting venture. Victor agreed to meet me, but only in person and only somewhere public. That alone told me enough. There was danger here, the kind that made people afraid to even talk. The next day, I drove across town to a dim little cafe tucked between shuttered shops. When I walked in, I spotted Victor immediately. Mid-40s, sharp-eyed, with the look of someone who had been burned before and learned never to trust fire again. "You're her father?" he asked, not even offering a handshake. "Yes," I said. "Please, tell me what I need to know." Victor studied me for a long moment, then leaned in. His voice was low, but his words carried a weight that hit me like a hammer. "He's a con. That's all he's ever been. He doesn't build anything, he drains. He finds people who trust too easily, families with resources, and he weaves himself into their lives. By the time they realize who he really is, he's already taken what he wants." My throat tightened. "And my daughter? She's next," Victor said grimly. "She won't see it. None of them do, not until it's too late. He's smart, too smart. He always leaves just before the walls close in." A cold dread settled over me. My daughter wasn't marrying a man. She was walking into a trap. But why hide me from the engagement dinner? Pressed. Victor's lips twisted into something between a smirk and a frown. "Because you're dangerous to him. Fathers usually are. You'd ask the questions he can't answer. You'd see the holes in his story. And if you start digging..." He paused, glancing around the cafe before finishing. "You'll find exactly what you've already started finding. That's why you weren't invited. Not because your daughter doesn't love you, but because he couldn't afford for you to be there." I sat frozen, the weight of his words crushing me. For months I had blamed myself. I had wondered if maybe my daughter truly didn't want me there, if maybe my presence really would have ruined her happiness. But the truth was far darker. She hadn't rejected me. She'd been manipulated into pushing me away. As I left the cafe, the world around me felt colder, sharper. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. A message from an unknown number. Opened it. Just 5 words. "Stop now. Or lose her." My chest tightened. Whoever sent it knew exactly what I was doing. They wanted me scared, silent. But all it did was confirm what I already knew. I was getting close to the truth. And if they thought a threat could stop me, they didn't know me at all. The warning only fueled my resolve. If my daughter couldn't see the danger, then I would have to make her see. But when I finally confronted her, her reaction was not what I expected. And it shattered me. The message, "Stop now, or lose her," echoed in my mind the entire night. Whoever sent it wasn't bluffing. They knew my every move, my every attempt to dig into the truth. And worst of all, they were right about one thing. I was dangerously close to losing my daughter. But silence had never saved anyone. So I decided to do the one thing I had been avoiding. I was going to confront her directly. The next afternoon, I drove to her apartment. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight I could feel the blood drain from my fingers. All I could think about was her smile, the innocent joy in her face whenever she used to run into my arms as a child. That same smile was now being manipulated, twisted into blind trust for a man who would ruin her. When she opened the door, her expression shifted instantly from surprise to guarded annoyance. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I forced a smile, though my heart was pounding. "We need to talk. Please just give me 10 minutes. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the apartment was neat but sparsely furnished, like a place still trying to feel like home. A framed photo on the counter caught my eye. Her and him, arms around each other, their smiles wide. Made me sick. I sat down across from her, gathering my words carefully. "Sweetheart, I know you think I'm being difficult, but I need you to listen. This man you're about to marry, he isn't who he says he is." Her eyes narrowed instantly. "Stop. Don't start this again." "I have proof," I pressed. "I've spoken to people who worked with him. He's left a trail of debts, broken promises, lies." "Dad," she snapped, her voice sharp as glass. "You don't know him. You don't know what he's been through. He told me you'd do this, try to poison me against him." Froze. "He told you that?" "Yes," she said, her tone filled with bitter certainty. "He said you'd never accept him, that you'd invent things, dig into his past, just to make him look bad. And now here you are, proving him right." The weight of her words hit me like a punch to the chest. He had anticipated this. He had prepared her. Every warning I gave, every shred of truth I uncovered, it would only confirm the lies he had already planted in her mind. I leaned forward, my voice trembling with urgency. "Sweetheart, I'm not your enemy. I'm your father. Love you. I'm trying to protect you. Please just look at the records. Just talk to the people I've talked to." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't from understanding. They were from anger. "You think you know everything, but you don't. He's kind, he's supportive, he believes in me. You don't see how happy he makes me. And you don't get to take that away from me." Her words shattered me. For the first time, I realized the depth of his manipulation. He hadn't just fooled her. He had built a wall between us, brick by brick, until I was the outsider, the intruder. I reached across the table, desperate. "I don't want to take your happiness. I just don't want to see you hurt. Please don't shut me out." But she pulled her hand away, her face hardened with defiance. "If you can't support me, then maybe you shouldn't be part of this at all. Maybe that's why you weren't invited." The silence that followed was suffocating. My own daughter, the little girl I once carried on my shoulders, the child I taught to ride a bike, was choosing a stranger's lies over my love. I stood slowly, my heart heavy. "I'll never stop being your father. And I'll never stop fighting for you. Even if you hate me for it." Her eyes glistened, but she turned away, refusing to answer. As I left her apartment, the warning text replayed in my mind. Stop now. Or lose her. Maybe they were right. Maybe by pushing too hard, I was driving her further into his arms. But there was no turning back. I couldn't stop. Not when the stakes were her entire future. I thought the confrontation was the lowest point. But the very next day, I uncovered something so shocking about her fiancé that it changed everything. And this time there would be no denying the truth. After my confrontation with my daughter, I drove home feeling hollow. Her words cut deeper than any blade. If you can't support me, then maybe you shouldn't be part of this at all. I barely slept that night. My thoughts spun in circles, torn between despair and determination. I knew pressing her further could push her away forever, but walking away meant leaving her in the grip of a man who thrived on deception. And then, as if fate itself couldn't allow me to give up, the final piece of the puzzle fell into my lap. Early the next morning, I received an email from a private investigator friend. Weeks earlier, I had asked him to quietly check into the fiancé's background. His message was brief, but the attachment spoke volumes. It contained court records, arrest logs, and a police report that tied everything together in one horrifying truth. The man my daughter was about to marry wasn't just a liar or a con artist. He had a criminal record, fraud, embezzlement, even an ongoing investigation in another state. The names were different in some files, but the photo left no doubt. It was him. He had reinvented himself again and again, leaving destruction in his wake. My hands shook as I printed the documents. My heart pounded with rage, but also with clarity. This was it. The undeniable proof that not even my daughter could ignore. That evening, I drove straight to my ex-wife's house. I knew they were all there. My daughter, her fiancé, even some extended family. When I knocked, the door opened to a room full of tense silence. "What are you doing here?" my ex-wife snapped, her eyes filled with irritation. "I'm here for my daughter," I said, my voice steady though my chest burned with fury. "And I won't leave until she sees the truth." My daughter stood, her arms crossed defensively. "Dad, please don't do this." But I cut her off, pulling the documents from my bag and laying them out on the coffee table. "Look, just look. Court records, fraud charges, police reports. Do you think I made this up? Do you think I want to hurt you? This is who he really is." Her fiancé's face drained of color. He tried to speak, but the words stumbled out like broken glass. Those are mistakes, misunderstandings." "Enough," I barked, slamming my hand on the table. "You've fooled enough people, but you won't fool my daughter. Not anymore." The room fell into stunned silence. My daughter's eyes darted between me, the documents, and the man she thought she loved. Slowly, the walls of denial began to crumble. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Is it true?" Her fiancé reached for her hand, but she recoiled. "Tell me it's not true," she demanded, her voice breaking. But he couldn't. His silence was his confession. She collapsed into tears, the weight of betrayal crashing over her. I moved closer, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, this is why I fought so hard. Not to control you. Not to ruin your happiness. But to save you from a man who would destroy your life." For the first time in weeks, she didn't push me away. She let me hold her as she cried. My ex-wife, pale and shaken, stared at the papers in disbelief. The man she had defended so fiercely was exposed. His lies unraveling before everyone. And him. He didn't fight back. He didn't deny it. He simply grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the door behind him, leaving behind nothing but silence and the wreckage of his deception. That night, as I sat with my daughter, I felt something shift. The wall between us wasn't gone completely, but cracks had formed. She finally saw me not as the villain her fiancé painted me to be, but as her father, the one who would stand in the fire if it meant saving her. The engagement was over. The truth was out. And though the road ahead would be long and painful, at least she was free. Sometimes being a parent means your love has to be stronger than their anger. Sometimes you have to risk losing them to save them. And though my daughter may never forget the pain of this betrayal, she will also never forget that I was the one who pulled her back from the edge. Now if you like my content, then subscribe my channel.